Dwayne Johnson had always discovered a singular piece in the rumble of a motorcycle engine. It stood apart from the flashbulbs of red carpet events or the endless demands of stardom. On a good ride, there were no scripts, no entourage, just the steady purr of a bike beneath him and a stretch of winding pavement ahead. That was exactly what he craved now. After weeks immersed in a film project, the schedule of stunt rehearsals and interview circuits had left him drained. So on this breezy afternoon, he threw on a scuffed leather jacket, pulled on some well-worn riding boots, and aimed to escape on his custom-built DJ Storm motorcycle, a machine he co-designed for both performance and the intangible feel of the road. His plan was simple: follow a meandering route through rural outskirts, where rolling hills gave way to open straights that you could ride for hours without passing more than a handful of vehicles. He had nothing extravagant in mind, just a chance to reconnect with that sense of freedom that city life so often constricted. As the miles rolled by, the scenery shifted from farmland to a more arid stretch, dotted with cacti and dusty gullies. The day's warmth sizzled across the blacktop, but Dwayne relished the heat on his face and the wind buffeting his jacket. Eventually, thirst nudged him toward a modest roadside diner, perched near a junction that seemed otherwise deserted. Pulling into its cracked asphalt lot, he noticed a line of bikes parked in an orderly row. An assortment of vintage Harleys, a couple of modern racing bikes, and one outlandish chopper with neon paint. The cluster signaled a group ride, possibly a small motorcycle club. Dwayne had no problem with that. In fact, most clubs warmly welcomed any fellow rider who respected basic etiquette. However, as soon as he switched off his engine and swung a leg over his seat, he felt a slight chill of tension in the air. There were about half a dozen men, each clad in black leather vests adorned with an embroidered raven's skull insignia. Their body language exuded ownership of the lot, the kind that said, "Who's stepping onto our turf?" One of them, a compact figure with arms folded across a vest reading Eclipse MC, peered at Dwayne like he was a curiosity or a trespasser. Dwayne chose not to engage them, hoping the day would stay calm. Slipping off his helmet, he stuffed it under his arm and made his way inside the diner. The interior boasted scuffed linoleum floors, retro green vinyl booths, and a humming neon sign advertising home-style burgers. An older waitress, Lucille by the embroidered tag on her blouse, offered a polite nod. "Coffee or a bite, honey?" she asked in that hospitable tone typical of small-town diners. "Just coffee, thanks," he replied in a low, unassuming voice, settling at the countertop. He heard the diner door open again, letting in a burst of sunlight, and sensed the presence of a few bikers who followed him inside. Tension bristled. He tried ignoring it, focusing instead on the old jukebox track that softly crooned from a corner speaker. But sometimes ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away. And from the vibe swirling behind him, Dwayne had a hunch that the simple coffee break was about to get complicated. The men from Eclipse MC who entered behind Dwayne spread out in a semicircle across the diner's main floor, as if staking a claim. Their voices carried faintly over the subtle hum of a ceiling fan. One biker with a braided beard, who seemed to assume the role of leader, leaned against a booth that otherwise would have been free for customers. He casually cracked his knuckles, letting the sharp pop reverberate. Another man, tall and wiry, hovered near the diner's door. They exchanged glances like a wolf pack scanning for weaknesses. Dwayne sipped his coffee, quietly monitoring the reflection in the metal napkin holder before him. He noted each of their positions, how they sized up his jacket and boots, how they whispered among themselves. He could practically feel them testing him. The waitress, Lucille, approached with a forced smile, offering sugar packets in a half-hearted attempt at small talk. "Anything else, sweetheart? Maybe a slice of pie?" She was trying to lighten the mood, but her eyes flicked warily at the bikers. He gave her a gentle head shake and a polite thanks, not wanting to drag her into any trouble. That was when Cole, the braided-beard ringleader, finally spoke up, his tone sardonic. "Hey there," he drawled from behind Dwayne's left shoulder. "Don't think I've seen you on these roads before." "Passing through?" The quiet hush that fell on the diner signaled everyone else was listening. Dwayne calmly glanced back, half rotating on his stool. "That's right," he answered simply. The MC patch on Cole's vest depicted a stylized raven skull with the words, Eclipse MC, no boundaries. Beneath it, a smaller patch read President, confirming he wasn't just any member. Cole's eyes narrowed. You ride that fancy custom outside? The question was rhetorical. Clearly, Cole had seen Dwayne's distinctive DJ storm. Dwayne gave a brief nod. Yup, it's my own design, with some friends. Just out for a ride. At this, Axel, the tall, wiry man by the door, let out a slight scoff. Your own design, huh? Bet it cost more than this entire diner's worth. You one of those big city hotshots who buy fancy bikes to show off at coffee shops? The young biker's sarcastic tone carried the weight of a man who often found joy in testing strangers. Dwayne had been in these scenarios enough to know feeding the flame was pointless. If you like to ride, it's never just for show, he remarked evenly, meeting Axel's gaze without hostility. The road reveals who's genuine. A flicker of something, maybe uncertainty, passed across Axel's face, but Cole pressed on, stepping closer. Your face looks kind of familiar, friend. You some sort of actor or something? The challenge in his voice was subtle but present. Some recognized Dwayne as a film star from action blockbusters, but not all. Possibly Cole was fishing for a reason to despise him or prove he was a fake. Dwayne exhaled. I do some film work, yeah, but I'm off the clock now. He hoped that would end the conversation. Instead, it only fueled their suspicions, as if confirming he was indeed the Hollywood type. In these men's eyes, a writer who was also a celebrity spelled trouble, or at least an easy target for intimidation. The leader, Cole, let a slow grin spread. Film star, huh? That means you got money, maybe. Got that expensive bike. That sure stands out around here. He paused, scanning the diner. A couple of local patrons had retreated to corners of their booths, not wanting any part of the tension. Dwayne recognized the pattern. Intimidation. They wanted to see if he'd cower. Doesn't matter who I am, Dwayne answered calmly, downplaying the star angle. I'm a rider, same as you. The road is the road. He toyed with his coffee mug, trying to keep his posture neutral. Axel snickered, crossing his arms. Yeah, but there's a difference. We live this life. Do you? Or do you just dabble for some documentary? Then fly back to your mansion in the hills. Show off your fancy custom for the cameras? A few of the bikers chuckled at that, feeding on his sarcasm. A younger man in the group named Rico hopped onto a bar stool next to Dwayne, spinning it around so he faced him. So if you're a real rider, let's test that. You can ride, right? Not just push it out of a trailer for photos? Rico's challenge made a few of the men snicker. The tension felt stifling, but also the diner's hush carried a sense of curiosity. This standoff might end in a brawl or a different test of skill. Dwayne let out a measured sigh. I've been riding bikes for years. Built them, raced them, traveled thousands of miles. I'm not here to prove anything. Just wanted coffee. He gestured to the half-empty mug, a hint of a smile on his lips. Seems like coffee turned into an inquisition. Rico exchanged glances with Cole, who gave a slight nod as if awarding the floor to him. Well, we don't like outsiders with big heads, or those who come flaunting expensive machines, acting above us. Maybe you should show us if you really belong on that thing out there, Rico proposed, voice dripping with challenge. Or else what? Dwayne inquired, arching an eyebrow. He wasn't spoiling for a fight, but if they insisted, he'd handle it. The waitress Lucille hovered in the background, her expression one of dread, likely anticipating chairs being tossed or fists flying. A short silence preceded Cole's answer. We got a tradition. If you want respect among riders, you gotta earn it. We can find a stretch of road out back, see if you can keep up with a real pack. If you're half as good as you say, you won't back down. This suggestion caused a ripple of excitement among the group. A test ride was a typical method, though sometimes overshadowed by bravado. They wanted to corner Dwayne into compliance or scare him away. Dwayne looked from face to face. He recognized the tactic. Push him into a race or challenge where they could humiliate him, or get a reason to jump him if he declined. Instead of fear, he felt a flicker of annoyance. If it'll end the suspicion, I'll ride, he said evenly. But let's keep it safe, not out to cause a wreck for your entertainment. Cole smirked, stepping back. Sure, we'll keep it safe, he lied. Just a friendly run. Let's see if that star-studded rep means anything on real pavement. The hush in the diner thickened as the Eclipse MC prepared to move outside, guiding Dwayne with them. Lucille, sensing trouble, cleared her throat. If y'all are fixing to step out, mind doing it quietly? I don't want no brawls in my place. Cole threw her a dismissive nod, not promising anything but acknowledging her request. Dwayne drained the last of his coffee, left a generous tip on the counter, and turned to follow them. He would have preferred to slip away, but these men wouldn't let it go. If he had tried to ride off alone, they might have chased him down, or worse, harassed someone else in their frustration. Outside, the sun was beginning to sink, casting slanted rays across the lot. The Eclipse MC hopped onto their bikes, revving engines to signal both their camaraderie and intimidation. A few onlookers, possibly other motorists or local passersby, paused to watch, transfixed by the sudden transformation of the quiet diner into a staging ground for a confrontation. Cole, remounting his vintage Harley, jerked his chin at Dwayne's distinctive DJ storm. "Fire it up," he commanded. "Let's see what that fancy custom can do." A chorus of rumbling engines swelled as the half-dozen Eclipse riders lined up at the parking lot exit. Dwayne swung a leg over his bike, took a breath, and started it. The throaty roar drew a brief hush. Some recognized that this machine was more than just high price. It had raw power, carefully engineered. A fleeting thought crossed Dwayne's mind. No script, no second takes. This is real. He gazed at the onlookers. Some brandished phones, recording or snapping pictures, no doubt expecting an accident or a fight. Dwayne disliked the attention, but was used to it. If anything, he wanted to prove no drama was necessary, that a calm, skilled rider could outlast any hostility. Cole beckoned for Dwayne to follow, rolling out of the lot onto a side highway that cut across the open countryside. The rest of Eclipse MC fell in behind them, effectively boxing Dwayne in, as if to say, no escape. The air whipped past as they accelerated. Despite the tension, Dwayne couldn't help savoring the road. The wide sky overhead, tinted pink and orange, contrasted sharply with the roars of half a dozen motorbikes. For a moment, the friction between them receded. Yet at the front, Cole kept looking over his shoulder, presumably waiting for the moment to test Dwayne. After about 2 miles of casual speed, Cole suddenly gunned the throttle. The other bikers followed, surging forward in unison. They wanted to see if Dwayne would do the same or be left behind. Dwayne responded with a calm twist of his wrist. The DJ Storm responded instantly, engine humming with effortless might as he accelerated, maintaining formation behind them. The farmland blurred by. Cole wove back and forth, attempting to unnerve Dwayne with erratic lane changes. Dwayne simply read the movements, shifting with fluid precision, never letting the group catch him in a corner or force him wide. The test had begun. The pack flew down that lonely highway, dust kicking up along the shoulders, the setting sun casting long shadows in their wake. Cole tried to lead them through tricky maneuvers, quick swerves, abrupt turn signals, even weaving in the lane, perhaps hoping to see Dwayne lose his nerve or mishandle his bike. Each time, Dwayne matched or outperformed them with smooth transitions. His posture was relaxed, eyes scanning the road ahead and the riders around him. Behind Cole and Dwayne, riders like Axel and Rico took up positions, occasionally revving and trying short burst accelerations. They wanted to see if Dwayne would panic. Instead, he only gave the DJ Storm enough throttle to stay aligned, never letting them corner him or coax him into a reckless drag. In fact, on one particularly sharp bend, Dwayne took the inside track so gracefully that he left 2 of the Eclipse men struggling to keep up. A creeping sense of respect edged into the Eclipse MC's attitudes. They had expected some pampered celebrity, a phony who owned an expensive toy. Yet the longer the ride continued, the clearer it became that Dwayne possessed real mastery. Every gear shift was timed impeccably. Every lean into a curve was balanced. Where they soared into corners with bravado, he glided with precision. Finally, after a good stretch of road, Cole signaled a left turn onto an older side route, the tarmac giving way to coarse gravel patches and potholes. Dwayne recognized the hazard but navigated each rough patch, letting his suspension do the work. The Eclipse group tried to maintain the breakneck pace, but their wheels spat gravel under them. A couple of them nearly slid out. Dwayne remained calm, adjusting to the uncertain surface. They emerged from that stretch into a clearing near a deserted lookout. Cole killed his engine. Dwayne followed suit. Distant hills, tinted purple by the last of daylight, created a dramatic backdrop. One by one, the Eclipse riders rolled to a stop. The abrupt hush felt jarring after the intense roar. A gentle breeze rustled dried grasses. "Helmet off," Cole exhaled, scanning Dwayne. "You actually ride better than I expected," he muttered, not quite willing to concede but lacking a retort to belittle him. Axel wiped sweat from his brow, clearly worn down, but made no snide comment. He simply gave a tight nod of acknowledgement. Dwayne raked a hand through his hair, undone by helmet flattening. "That enough of a test?" he asked, voice measured. He wasn't gloating. He had no need to. Instead, he left the question hanging, giving them space to glean the result for themselves. After a beat, Cole slid off his seat, walking a few paces forward. The others parted, forming a loose half-circle. Tension lingered, though softened. The typical dynamic of, "we'll show you how it's done," had flipped. Now curiosity underpinned their stares. They might have realized they'd found a man who not only belonged, but could outshine them if he wished. The hush on that deserted lookout extended for a moment longer, the only sounds being a stray breeze and the ticking of hot engines cooling. Dwayne Johnson stood with his arms lightly crossed, reading the hesitation in Cole's posture. It was an uneasy standoff, but the hostility that once filled the diner seemed to dissipate. The leader of Eclipse MC wasn't quite sure how to pivot from confrontation to acceptance. Eventually, Cole cleared his throat. "Look, I'll say this. You can ride." He offered a half shrug that seemed as close to an apology as he might get. Around them, the other bikers, Axel, Rico, plus three others who hadn't spoken, exchanged glances as though deciding how to follow their leader's tone. The tension had eased, but no one wanted to appear weak. Axel, the tall one, slowly pulled off his leather gloves. "I guess we assumed wrong about you. Not every day a movie guy can handle a bike that well." He tried to maintain a sliver of bravado, but a begrudging respect slipped through. Dwayne relaxed his stance slightly. "I get it. A lot of folks in my line of work might treat a motorcycle as a prop, but for me, riding is different. Always has been." He let the statement linger, not explaining further. The road, after all, seldom needed explanations. Rico, who'd been a bit mouthy at the diner, stepped forward, pointing to Dwayne's DJ Storm. "That's a custom, right? Doesn't look like any standard brand. Where'd you get it done?" His tone was more curious than mocking. A modest smile surfaced on Dwayne's face. "A personal design with a small team. We wanted a cruiser sport hybrid that truly resonates with the rider. The DJ Storm is built for performance, but also comfort over long rides. It's not about the brand label, it's about synergy with the road." Cole eyed the bike with newfound interest, running a calloused hand over the seat. "She's a beauty," he muttered. "Never seen anything quite like it." One of the quieter bikers, a stocky man named Griff, finally spoke, voice subdued. "So that design is your baby? You're not just a brand ambassador or something?" Dwayne shook his head. "No corporate stuff. Just me, some engineers, and a passion for building something that merges style with genuine function." He paused, glancing from face to face. "That's what matters in riding. Devotion, not pretense." A curious quiet overcame them. They had started the day eager to put this Hollywood pretty boy in his place, only to find themselves drawn to his earnestness about riding. It was an intangible bond that real bikers recognized, the sincerity that can't be faked or purchased. Finally, Cole let out a throaty chuckle and jerked his head at Axel and Rico. "Well, you proved you can ride. I guess that's that. We got no more reason to give you grief." Another small hush followed, suggesting a question. But what next? Dwayne exhaled. The intimidation they had tried at the diner had run its course, replaced by a mixture of apology and admiration. He simply nodded. "Then how about we find a neutral place to grab a real coffee? My treat. Maybe swap some stories." "No one's got to prove anything." The group exchanged glances, then, some more grudgingly than others, signaled agreement. This wasn't their typical script, but the day had defied expectations from the start. They remounted their bikes, departing that lonely overlook with a fresh perspective. Gone was the competitive tension from earlier. Instead, the convoy rode with a relaxed unity that might have surprised any observer. Dwayne took the lead, not with arrogance, but simply to guide them down a scenic back road he had glimpsed on the map earlier. Eclipse MC trailed in a loose formation, more curious than combative now. The road extended before them in gentle curves, farmland on either side, the sky painted with swirling oranges and pinks as dusk approached. The sense of shared camaraderie was palpable. Engines rumbled in harmony, and the wind battered them all equally. There's a reason bikers talk about riding as a brotherhood. A certain intangible bond forms when you share the open highway, leaving everyday burdens behind you. Eventually, they spotted a small coffee joint with a large front porch. As they pulled in, the sign overhead read, Blue Mesa Cafe. The place felt warm and welcoming. Wooden rocking chairs lined the porch, and the faint aroma of freshly ground beans wafted through the windows. The group parked, dismounted, and entered together, something unimaginable just an hour before. Inside, the barista, a friendly-looking woman named Carla, greeted them with a raised brow, quickly putting two and two together about the unusual gathering. Dwayne left his helmet with the others near the entrance, approaching the counter with a subdued grin. "I think we'll take a big round. Coffee, maybe some pastries if you've got them." Cole and the others removed their gloves, stepping forward with an awkwardness that suggested none of them had planned on this. Axel stood near Dwayne, scanning the cozy interior with a hint of curiosity. "Never even knew this place existed," he admitted, drumming his fingers on the menu. "We usually stick to the diner back there, or a few bars." Rico, paying attention to the small display of homemade muffins, smirked. "Well, guess we're exploring new territory." His tone was wry but no longer mocking. Dwayne passed Carla some cash, insisting on covering the group's orders. "My idea, my treat," he stated simply, deflecting any attempts to argue. Carla nodded politely, punching their orders into the register. Cole, the group's nominal leader, hovered close by, clearing his throat. "Listen, about earlier, we were out of line." He paused, trying to find the right words. Dwayne gave him space, not offering any easy outs. Finally, Cole continued, "We're used to dealing with posers, guys who buy fancy bikes to look cool, but never actually respect the road. It's a code thing, you know?" Dwayne inclined his head. "I get it. No harm done." The short exchange carried a lot of weight, the grudging acceptance that illusions had been shattered. They gathered their coffees, found a cluster of tables near the cafe's corner. The hush of the place felt almost surreal, a complete departure from the near brawl they'd nearly engaged in earlier. Maybe it was the coffee's aroma or the day's events, but no one raised their voice now. The men sipped, reflecting on the unexpected path that had taken them from confrontation to forging an odd sense of kinship. The seating arrangement at Blue Mesa Cafe turned into something reminiscent of a writer's roundtable, though the circle included men who'd begun the day on a collision course. Dwayne sat at one end with Cole to his right, Axel and Rico across, and the rest of Eclipse MC scattered around. Soft acoustic music played overhead, providing a gentle undertone to the conversation. Cole began, leaning in. "I guess we owe you a bit more than a coffee. We were quick to judge. The star, that custom. We see folks pass through all the time who act like they own the road, but they don't have a clue." He fiddled with his cup, eyes shifting to Dwayne. "But you, who would have guessed you're the real deal?" Axel nodded, sipping an espresso shot. "No joke. Thought we'd bust your bubble. Instead, you left us in the dust." The confession came with a small grin, like he was relieved to drop the tough guy act. Dwayne set his mug down, scanning their faces. "It's not about the brand or cost. I build and ride because it's in my blood. Being recognized, that's just an extra complication. But I'll always be a rider first." He kept his voice measured, modest. Rico shook his head, exhaling a low whistle. "All that talk about scripts and cameras, we were sure you were a poser. Guess that's what we get for assuming." A note of humor flickered in his eyes. One of the quieter Eclipse members, a man named Hoyt, cleared his throat. "Heard rumors you co-founded a brand or something. Arch Bikes, right? Thought it was a vanity project. Now I see it's a passion, huh?" Dwayne gave a nod. Yeah, it's about craftsmanship. We focus on performance, synergy, and an authentic rider experience. The idea is for each model to bond with its owner, like an extension of you, not just an ornament. He paused, letting them process his sincerity. I get why you were skeptical. A lot of folks talk big about riding, but never put in the miles. A hush fell, broken only by a group exhalation of acceptance. They'd come full circle, from suspicion to understanding. Outside, night had fully descended, stars shimmering above their parked bikes. The cafe's porch lights cast elongated shadows. Eventually, Cole placed his cup aside and faced Dwayne. We're not known for making friends easily. We keep a tight circle, watch out for posers. But you, today was an eye-opener. Consider us corrected. He extended a hand again, this time with genuine warmth. Dwayne shook it. Axel smirked. So what now? You ride off into the sunset, or? Dwayne leaned back, letting a small grin emerge. I was hoping to just enjoy the road alone. But after all this, maybe I'll stick around a bit if you want. We can share a route. I know a scenic track about 20 miles north. Winding curves, great overlooks. Could be a memorable ride for all of us. The idea lit up the group's faces with interest. A combined ride? A few hours ago, that notion was impossible. Now it seemed like the perfect coda to their earlier tensions. Rico tapped his watch. It's late, but yeah, let's do it. The moon's bright enough, and who needs daylight if you can handle your bike? Dwayne laughed softly, finishing his coffee. Fair point. The roads look different under moonlight. Maybe we'll see who's truly comfortable out there. As they stood, a subtle wave of mutual respect bound them. The watchers near other tables had mostly returned to their own business, though some still peeked curiously at the group. The men walked outside, prepared to mount up, forging a new path that none of them predicted just a few hours ago. They set off under the dusk-laden sky, engines throbbing in unison like a well-rehearsed symphony. Eclipse MC, with Cole, Axel, Rico, and Hoyt among them, formed a V-shaped formation behind Dwayne. This arrangement was no longer about intimidation, but a reflection of trust. The uncertain hush of earlier had melted into an almost exhilarating vibe, each rider testing themselves, not out of hostility, but out of shared passion. As the group traversed the route Dwayne mentioned, they found themselves weaving along an elevated stretch of highway that offered panoramic views of a valley below. The moon had risen, a pearl in the inky black sky, bathing the road in gentle silver. Now and then, the headlights would reflect on a distant guardrail, revealing tight curves that demanded skill. Dwayne handled these bends gracefully, leaning the DJ storm with fluid confidence, the others following. In that silent communion of riders, they communicated via hand signals, calling out hazards or indicating stops. A few times, younger members of Eclipse MC tried pulling side by side with Dwayne, wanting to see just how relaxed he was controlling his custom bike. Each time, the man who had once seemed like a target or outsider showed them he was entirely in his element. Eventually, they pulled into a scenic rest area perched above a shimmering reservoir, the moon's reflection rippling across its surface. Cutting their engines, they listened as the echoes faded into the expansive night. Some men removed their helmets, gazing at the water below, realization dawning that what was supposed to be an intimidation attempt had morphed into a night ride they'd talk about for years. Cole parked next to Dwayne, unstrapping his helmet. After a moment's pause, he spoke. We never had the chance to do anything like this with someone from your world, you know? Didn't think we'd ever want to. His tone was subdued, introspective. But you get it, this lifestyle. Dwayne offered a small nod. I understand the stereotypes. Many people from my world treat bikes as status symbols or props, and many from yours assume outsiders can't be real riders. The road's more honest than that. Rico fiddled with his gloves, eyes darting around the starlit sky. Must be wild being recognized everywhere. If people see you, it's always a big deal. How do you reconcile that with just wanting to ride in peace? A half smile appeared on Dwayne's lips. It's a balancing act. Some days it's tricky. But the bike, the ride, those remind me who I really am. No cameras, no script. Just me and the hum of the engine. A hush again, but it was comfortable. like a group of old friends enjoying the calm. Axel sat on a low concrete wall, gazing at the horizon. Never thought I'd be traveling with a Hollywood name, yet here we are forging a memory that's real. Dwayne only shrugged. Sometimes life's best rides are the unexpected ones. His words felt final, yet also an invitation to consider a bigger truth. That brotherhood on the road transcends background, ego, and what you do for a living. The rest area setting made it feel as though time stood still. Overhead stars multiplied, unhampered by city lights. Eclipse MC and Dwayne lingered, discussing the nuances of riding gear, favorite routes, and places to find the best roadside meals. For a moment, they were simply bikers shooting the breeze, unburdened by social divisions or public persona. Even those who had mocked Dwayne at the diner found themselves enthralled by his stories of cross-country journeys and out-of-the-way roads in different countries. Cole eventually rose from the low concrete wall, rummaging in his pocket for a battered pack of cigarettes. He turned to Dwayne. "Mind if I—" He gestured, half asking permission to smoke. Dwayne shook his head in a casual gesture. "Go for it, though I'll skip that vice." A flicker of mutual respect passed between them. A passing breeze brought the faint scent of pine from somewhere in the valley below. Hoyt took a swig from a water canteen. "Used to think guys like you were all talk," he said plainly. "But you're all right, man." "Thanks," Dwayne replied. "And you're not so bad yourselves." He paused, leaning against his bike. "So, Eclipse MC, what's it stand for exactly?" Cole exhaled a plume of smoke, stubbing the cigarette on the ground. "We're a small crew, mostly local. The name suggests we travel roads others don't, overshadowing their notion of normal. Maybe it was about forging an identity." He shrugged. "But tonight, I realized identity is flexible, not just locked to a patch." Axel nodded. "We started as a tight-knit group. Over time, we got suspicious of anyone else. Maybe too suspicious." He half laughed at his own admission. "Wanted to keep outsiders at bay to preserve what we had." Dwayne mulled that. "Sometimes preserving something can turn into building walls. We all do it, but stepping out of that comfort zone can lead to something bigger." He gestured around at the star-filled sky, the cluster of bikes, the camaraderie formed. "Like this." Rico scratched his ear, seeming uncertain. "We gave you a rough time, so I'm still not sure why you're being so gracious." Dwayne studied the question. "The road taught me that grudges weigh you down. I have enough on my plate with movie sets, public appearances, and real-life responsibilities. I don't need pointless battles with fellow riders. If we can come to an understanding, it's better for everyone." A wry grin cracked across Rico's face. "Guess I can see that." From across the rest area, a woman who had been traveling alone approached timidly, phone in hand. "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt," she murmured, eyes darting between the group. "Could I maybe get a picture with you, Mr. Johnson? My brother's a huge fan." Dwayne gave a short chuckle, glancing at the MC guys. None seemed offended. Instead, they parted politely. "Sure," he said to the woman, adopting a friendly stance for a quick photo. The flash briefly illuminated the smirks on the Eclipse men's faces. They recognized that even at midnight on a random road, Dwayne's fame found him, yet they no longer viewed it with scorn. After the snapshot, the woman expressed heartfelt thanks, hopped in her sedan, and drove off, leaving the convoy to themselves again. By then it was quite late, the air turning chillier. Some members of Eclipse MC chatted about returning to the diner or heading home, the ride having satiated their need for speed. Dwayne took a look at his phone, numerous missed calls, likely from film associates or family, and a few texts from friends checking up on him. Cole yawned, stretching his arms. "We're not far from our usual hangout, an old warehouse by the outskirts. We tinker with our bikes there, sometimes crash for the night if we've had a long ride. You're welcome to swing by if you want. No pressure." His voice was casual, but the invitation carried weight. It was a gesture that effectively said, "We accept you." Dwayne considered it, scanning the horizon. He was a good hour away from his planned lodging. The idea of seeing how these men lived piqued his interest. They'd shown him their road challenge side. Maybe it was time to see their community side. "Sure," he said with a nod. "I've got time to spare." The group hopped back on their bikes. This time, Dwayne followed Cole's lead. The ride took them down a narrower strip of road, eventually curving into an industrial area marked by worn factory buildings and high chain-link fences. The warehouse in question had half its signage peeled off, just the faint outline of a long-defunct company name. Rolling up to the heavy metal door, the Eclipse guys switched on a few overhead fluorescents, revealing an interior that was part bike garage, part clubhouse. Tools lined one wall, a sofa and some battered recliners formed a lounge corner, and a mini-fridge hummed by a desk cluttered with old maps. Axel smirked, gesturing. "Welcome to our fortress. It's not fancy, but it's ours." Hoyt rummaged in the fridge, tossing cans of soda and beers around. Dwayne gingerly accepted a cold soda, not wanting to mix alcohol with writing. Rico, leaning against a metal workbench, pointed to a half-disassembled engine on a stand. "We do all our own repairs here. None of that top-dollar mechanic stuff." Then he shrugged. "Though now, seeing your custom up close, maybe we need to learn a few new tricks." Dwayne set his soda aside, walking to examine their workspace. "Sometimes the best builds come out of places like this, where real riders solve real problems," he commented. "A fancy facility doesn't guarantee passion." A mutual grin crossed the room. Cole lowered himself onto the tattered sofa, yawning again. "We spend half our nights messing with bikes, then daybreak sees us on the highway. It's the only life we know." His gaze flicked to Dwayne. "Didn't imagine we'd share that with you." Dwayne exhaled softly, scanning the place. Spare parts, bits of chain, the smell of old oil. "Life's funny that way. We come from different backgrounds, but the road's a great equalizer." They ended up talking for another hour, exchanging war stories of near crashes, roadside mishaps, mechanical improvisations, and epic cross-country journeys. Cole relayed how Eclipse MC came together. A few friends who grew up in the area, adopting the name Eclipse after a particularly intense midnight ride under a blood moon. Over time, they gained a reputation for being territorial, suspicious of outsiders. Some said they had borderline run-ins with the law, mostly small-scale brawls or standoffs with other clubs that infringed on their roads, but nothing quite serious enough to land them in prison. Axel asked Dwayne about set life. Did he ever use real rides in action scenes, or was it all green screen? Dwayne described the stunts he'd performed in certain roles, how sometimes a real motorcycle soared off a ramp, but obviously carefully choreographed. He then recounted an anecdote about nearly wiping out on a film shoot in South America, a misjudged corner, a steep cliff. That near disaster taught him the road never forgives overconfidence. The Eclipse men nodded. They understood that intimately. Rico, typically the mouthiest, had grown quiet, listening to Dwayne's account of how each ride could be humbling. "So even you can get a wake-up call, huh?" he murmured. Dwayne smirked. "Absolutely. The day you think you're untouchable is the day you risk everything." The lesson resonated, a far cry from the confrontational attitude they'd shown him hours before. While the conversation meandered, the MC's environment became more comfortable. Griff tinkered with a half-broken headlight on a bench, occasionally chuckling at jokes. Others rummaged for extra chairs to accommodate the group. Dwayne found it refreshing to see that beneath their tough exteriors, they cared about the same things. A well-tuned engine, a good route, respect among peers. Eventually, though, exhaustion wore on them. Dwayne noticed a clock on the wall reading close to 1 a.m. He had a morning meeting on the horizon, plus he'd promised to phone an old friend to discuss a separate bike design. Rising from the battered stool he'd commandeered, he said softly, "All right, guys, it's been a day. Think I'd better roll out." Cole, from his corner of the sofa, stood up to see him off. "You sure? Could crash here if you want. We got a spare bunk, though it's nothing fancy." The offer was genuine, surprising Dwayne with the hospitality. He appreciated it, but shook his head. "I've got obligations in the morning. Need to check in with some folks. But thanks." Outside, the night air was cooler. The horizon no longer glowed with the sun's afterglow. Pure darkness enveloped the roads. Eclipse MC escorted him to his DJ storm, albeit out of courtesy this time, not intimidation. Dwayne placed his hands on the seat for a moment, letting the calm wash over him. He turned to them with a final earnest nod. "I'll remember this night. Guess we proved something to each other, yeah?" Cole smirked, hooking a thumb in his vest pocket. "I guess we did. If you're ever in the area again, you know where to find us. We got your back." He paused, then offered a handshake once more. Axel, Rico, and Hoyt each gave their own version of a farewell, a nod, a pat on the back, a fist bump. The tension from the diner was but a distant memory, replaced by an odd sense of new friendship. Kicking the stand up, Dwayne swung a leg over the bike. The engine roared to life, echoing within the half-empty lot. "Ride safe," was all he said, letting the words double as thanks and farewell. Then with a twist of the throttle, he guided the DJ Storm onto the quiet main drag. In the rearview mirror, he watched the silhouettes of the Eclipse MC wave once or twice before returning inside their warehouse. The ride back felt liberating. With only the moon and scattered stars overhead, he navigated the winding highways back toward civilization. A sense of accomplishment, and not the kind from finishing a film or winning an award, lingered in his chest. He'd turned potential hostility into a new alliance built on mutual respect for the machine and the open road. A day that began with the clink of coffee cups ended with engines resonating under a midnight sky. And as Dwayne traveled home, he realized how the simplest rides often yield the greatest stories. The diner, the race, the tension melting into brotherhood. This was the unwritten script that no Hollywood writer could match. An authentic expression of what it meant to be a real rider.